Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of King Dio, Rabbit Hole, Eye of the Dragon, and Cruel and Beautiful. Nintendo has once again made history. For the second week in a row, they have a full 30-30 on Famitsu. That's right, like every single game on the Famitsu Top 30 Bestsellers list is a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Not a Nintendo Switch exclusive, is a Nintendo Switch release. Like, some of these are multiplats. They're selling the best on Switch. Some of them are ports. Some of them, they're selling the best on Switch. Some of them are entirely new games. They're selling the most on Switch. Japanese developers are scrambling to try and come up with an excuse to continue not supporting Nintendo Switch, to continue what they've been doing for the past 25 years and supporting PlayStation over Nintendo. Like, I'm sure you've seen this. Like, I keep bringing this up, but like people like Nagoshi, the Yakuza guy, people like Harada, the Tekken guy, the Tales of Horizon, the Tales guy, like those people are downright begging Japanese audiences to continue buying PlayStation brands, because without PlayStation, without their support, there is no third-party console industry. Like, these consoles, these games are going to become entirely subservient to Nintendo. Nintendo is well on its way to establishing a monopoly in the gaming sphere, which is why, of course, the real reason why, that services like Google Stadia, like these new subscription services, like stuff like PlayStation and Xbox, are all failing. At this point, the only thing that's really keeping the third parties alive are these like subscription services like Xbox Game Pass that are sort of like artificially prolonging the lifespan of these consoles, of these games, right? Because like we've seen this happen for years, right? Where like a big new exciting game comes out on PlayStation and Xbox, and within a year it's like $20. Like, nobody wants to play it anymore because it doesn't have the staying power that Nintendo games do. Now, people like to say that like it's because Nintendo like overprices all their shit, but what actually happens is that like after release, after people spend like 6 hours or so playing through the newest Uncharted or whatever, like the game loses all of its appeal. Like, once you beat the game once, it's completely over, isn't worth playing again, isn't worth thinking about, and is just a blip on the radar, like just something you experienced once upon a time. Nobody wants to look at it that way. Nobody wants to admit that Nintendo has always had the better consoles, the better games, the better release schedules, the better business tactics, because that goes against the carefully constructed narrative that has been built up by corrupt game journalists and Sony shills over the past 25 years. Or longer than that if you include Sega. Like, the fact is, if people really hated Nintendo, if they really hated them so much, why are they still buying their games? Why is Nintendo so dominant that they're dominating a sales chart, like completely? Every game on the top 30 is a Nintendo Switch game. If Nintendo was so anti-consumer and so like poorly received among the public, why have they become so popular? This doesn't happen overnight. This isn't something you just do in a day. What Nintendo has done is essentially put themselves in a position where companies like Sony and Xbox and Steam cannot compete with them. Like, we're at the point now where we can't reasonably say that Xbox and PlayStation are doing things the Switch can't do. Like, if you say that, you're deluding yourselves, because what game does PlayStation 5 have that Switch already doesn't have or can't run? Basically nothing, right? Like, people like to say Persona 5 can't run on Switch, that's a joke. Yakuza can't run on Switch, that's a joke. Nier Automata can't run on Switch, that's a joke. People were saying that Mortal Kombat 11, Witcher 3 couldn't run on Switch, could never run on Switch, and look where we are now. The excuses are just running out. They have completely run dry, and companies are still trying to act like it's the 90s. Like, Sony still has the money to throw around to like compete with Nintendo, but not only has Sony's power structure declined over the past 25 years, like people are a bit more aware of their shit these days, Nintendo has grown exponentially and become extremely successful. they are getting bigger while Sony is declining. And what that means in the world of video games is that eventually Nintendo is going to exceed them completely, like dominate them so thoroughly that there won't be any competition at all. At this point, we're kind of in like the dying stage of like the declining process, because like, you know, we're still like in that phase where like people are pretending to be excited over PlayStation games coming to PC and stuff like that. People haven't like acknowledged the reality of the situation, is that PlayStation is no longer profitable. PlayStation is a dead brand. It's done. It's over. Like, nobody cares about the exclusives anymore after The Last of Us Part 2. Nobody cares about the PS5 anymore. And, like, no subscription service or no online thing they can offer can really compete with Xbox. Like, honestly, it feels like Nintendo's mostly competing with, like, free games at this point. Like, shit that's on mobile, shit that's on Xbox Game Pass, like, and those things really can't compete with them from a quality standpoint. And I think that's going to be like the main thing that like really sets Nintendo apart going forward, is that like they're going to be known for their quality as opposed to like purely making a lot of money. So if you want a good game, if you're an enthusiast, you're going to want to pick up a Switch. If you're a casual, if you're a pleb, if you're a grandma, you know, if you're dying of COVID or whatever, you can just pick up your smartphone and play like, I don't know, Uncharted dating sim or whatever bullshit they put out. Like, play that for 5 minutes, get bored, and then like just go on with your life. You know, for people who actually like games, you know, people, the actual audience, right? People who actually buy and play video games, we're reaching the point where Nintendo is the only viable option. Because pirate sites are getting taken down. I'm sure Nintendo will eventually like sort of emulator-proof their consoles going forward. You won't be able to pirate Nintendo games anymore, even if you do manage to get them uploaded onto like a PC or whatever. You won't be able to like you know, make fan games or continue your weird narratives. Like, you won't be allowed to like make your fan animations and profit off of them. You won't be allowed to like make derivative indie games based on Nintendo properties. Like once Nintendo sort of like solidifies their position on the top of the console industry, once they really start like really proving themselves to be way bigger, way more successful, way more popular than PlayStation, like they won't be able to compete. Like the competition kind of sells itself on the basis of being more convenient than like than other platforms, right? Like, you already have a PlayStation, so you might as well play like this, and this on PlayStation. But if the Switch is so much more popular than the PlayStation, why would you even have a PlayStation to begin with? Like, if you're going to play video games, you're going to want to do it on your Nintendo console. And I think that's kind of what this 30-30 thing is proving right now, is that the Japanese audience is at the point where they only play on Switch or on mobile. Like, the other consoles are worthless to them. They offer nothing that the Switch can already do better. And that mindset, I think, is going to spread to other countries. I don't think there's going to be like any out of nowhere like AAA studio like putting out like a big budget game on a big budget exclusive on PlayStation ever again, because they've burned all their bridges, right? Like, Kojima's gone, you know, Sakaguchi is gone. Like, legit, like all of like the big players in the 90s have been gone for years at this point, like decades in a lot of cases. And like, it's really starting to wear them down, right? Like, there is never going to be another Metal Gear. There is never going to be another real Final Fantasy. Like, nobody cares about Final Fantasy 16. Like, how hard do you think Final Fantasy 16 is going to chart? Like 30-30. Like, if you're not putting your game on Nintendo consoles, you're doing yourself a disservice. You are limiting your appeal, your reach, to the widest possible audience. Like, in a desperate bid to try and get them to stay on PlayStation. And I think more and more, you know, since most of these games are not at all appealing to a general audience, more and more people are going to say, I'm just going to stick to my Switch. And that is what we're seeing in these sales charts. Like, in the Wii U generation, we were regularly seeing like Wii U games in the top 30. We were regularly seeing like 3DS games like, you know, dominate the charts. It was a big deal, right? But now we've gone even beyond that. Well, we've got like Super Saiyan 3, right? This is even further beyond. And what's more, I think it's going to stay that way going forward. Like, I don't think anything is going to change ever. Like not even when like the successor to the Switch comes out. Like, all that's going to happen is that like the divide between the sales charts is going to be between people who haven't upgraded yet and people on the new platform. That's going to be what sales charts look like in the future. It's just like different Nintendo consoles dominating the charts. Like, there is going to be no recovery for PlayStation 5. There's going to be no recovery for their IPs, their game studios, because like they've all decayed beyond recognition. Like studios like Ubisoft, they're never putting out anything relevant again. Ooh, I need to talk about that. Like, for any the days of non-Nintendo companies, like sort of putting up this facade of dominating the console industry are over. Like, the plumber is back on his throne.